Streaming around the world. From the United Kingdom, you're listening to the TnT Nostalgia Podcast.
Wait a minute, Doc. Are you telling me that you built a time machine out of a DeLorean?
With Jason and Greg taking you back, one memory at a time.
Okay, Greg, this is the TnT Nostalgia Podcast.
Oh, you're throwing that new word in, nostalgia. You didn't
Yeah.
tell me about that in the script.
I think I did.
No.
But we are today talking about one of our favourite films, which happens to be one of the worst rated films in the history of films that have been rated. What is it, Greg?
Star Wars?
No, Greg.
Really?
Yeah, you've just alienated loads of people there.
I was only joking, Star Wars people. What are they called?
Fans?
Oh, not Trekkers.
No. Oh, you're getting even worse. Greg, you're digging yourself a deep
I knew
hole.
that was just a joke, though. I know all the Star Wars people are called Warsies.
Just get on with it. What's the film we're talking about?
Superman 4.
We are indeed talking about Superman 4.
Hopefully, everything you've ever wanted to know.
The greatest hope against the threat of nuclear war is Superman.
I'm going to do what our governments have been unwilling or unable to do. Effective immediately, I'm going to rid our planet of all nuclear weapons.
This podcast will be available on your favourite podcast apps, whatever you use to stream your podcasts, and will also be available on our YouTube channel for the time being, which is Tea and Toast, or Too Old to Grow Up is the channel name.
Which you've never watched it before. You should do, shouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
What is it, Jason?
What?
What else do we do on YouTube?
We do lots of stuff. We talk about nostalgic things on YouTube, and we look at toys, and we do retro collectors, and
Put that gin down.
we cook things and all of that stuff.
Yeah, but it's all
Occasionally.
retro.
It is retro. Anyway, Superman 4, Greg. Where are we in the franchise of Superman when Superman 4
Well,
comes
Superman
about?
3 wasn't such a success, was it?
No.
And I think they thought it would be, and they could have kept going and going, but obviously it didn't work out.
Well, I mean, if you go back to the beginning of the story, 1978, Superman, the first film, is released, directed by Richard Donner, and they simultaneously made part of Superman 2, didn't they? Which
Yeah.
was also directed by Richard Donner. Richard Donner famously didn't get on with the Salkins, who owned the rights to Superman. So he was kind of fired, and Superman 2 was finished by someone else. Richard Lester.
You had to say Dick, didn't you?
Yes. And then Superman 3 was made, and it just wasn't a patch on either of the first two films.
Which really surprised me, because the first one was so... I suppose fairy tale is the word. It was really lovely, beautifully made.
Yeah.
And then 3, which is the way the directors, the Solkinds, and all them wanted to go, was more of a comedy.
Yeah, it was the campiest of all of them.
Which I don't understand, because the first one was such a hit.
Well, the tagline for the first one was "You'll believe a man can fly," and I did when I was a kid.
And they did that not knowing how they were going to make him fly.
No,
because
but
there's no CGI then, was there?
No, they figured it out, and when we were kids, it was just one of those films. Obviously, I was only 2 when it came out, so I came to it a little bit later in life when it was shown on TV all the time.
You was 2?
Yeah, you weren't even born, Greg.
No, I wasn't even born, Jason.
So it came out, and we all watched it throughout our childhoods. And then obviously followed by Superman 2. Superman 3 came out, and it starred somebody who was supposed to be a lead name, but Christopher Reeve was the lead name for me. But they felt like they had to have a big comedic star in it, didn't they?
Which didn't work at all.
No, Richard Pryor is fantastic.
But do you know how that came about as well?
No, go on.
He was on a chat show, something like the Letterman show. Forgive me if it's the wrong one, or the Jay Leno show. And he said, I always wanted to be in a Superman film. And the Sorkins went, ding, big money, big name, let's get him in. And they did. No audition, no nothing.
Now, the concept of 3 sounds great. He goes back to Smallville, back to his hometown, school reunion. Could have been brilliant. But then they put in all the stuff with Richard Pryor and the computers, and then the bit that we hate, Greg, where they turn the woman into a robot. Anyway, all of that gets us to Superman 4.
By the way, Gene Hackman refused to play the role in Superman 3.
Did he?
Yeah.
Why?
Because he wouldn't have done Superman 2 if he'd known Richard Donner wasn't doing it either. And now you're going to ask me, well, he did Superman 4, didn't he? And that wasn't Richard Donner, but I'll get to that later.
Okay. So, Superman 3 has happened.
So?
The Salkins have kind of given up on the Superman franchise and decided...
Well, they did Supergirl first, didn't they?
Yeah, they were going to do Supergirl, because Superman 3 hadn't done that well. That's the right order, isn't it? They did Superman 3, decided it hadn't done that well, so they were going to try Supergirl.
Yeah. Pump all the money into that.
That was produced by...
Someone else?
No, wasn't it produced by Canon?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so at that point, the Salkins had given the rights to Superman and Supergirl to Canon.
Yeah.
Are you just going to check that, Greg?
I'm just going to check it. You keep talking, Jason.
So they decided, instead of making another Superman film, they were going to make Supergirl, because they thought they could give that a go, the franchise a go. Famously, another terrible film in the super universe, if you like. Mm-hmm. Although it's another one that I quite liked as a kid. Christopher Reeve was supposed to be in it.
It wasn't.
It wasn't?
It was Columbia EMI Warner.
Ah, well then, perhaps it was after this that Canon bought the rights, and we'll get to that in a minute. So the rights were still with Columbia for Supergirl. And Greg, what did you think of Supergirl?
Well, I remember as a kid, I was quite furious that they even attempted to make the film, just because Superman was just so brilliant. Nothing to do with him being a girl or anything, but that story didn't work out for me, did it? Because in Superman 1, he was the only survivor from the planet Krypton.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, there's a Supergirl film.
But...
It may have worked, sorry to interrupt, it may have worked if Christopher Reeve actually had agreed to go in it, which he said no.
Yeah.
It may have worked then.
When I was a kid and I watched it, I was fully expecting Superman to appear in it at some point.
Yeah, I was.
And he did, on a poster.
A poster.
But...
Do you think he got paid for that?
There are two saving graces for Supergirl. One is Helen Slater, whom I was in love with as a kid.
I still am. I'm married.
And next is Peter Cook.
Yeah, Peter. I mean, you wouldn't have put him in a superhero film, would you?
He was in a funny place in his career at that point, wasn't he? I think Dudley Moore was doing well in movies, commercial movies. Arthur 2, On the Rocks, 10, Best Defence, which was a terrible film. But anyway, he was doing quite well commercially, wasn't he? Peter Cook wasn't, and I think he was struggling with his mental health at the time as well. But he was a big name for them to get in that film, I think. Although it wasn't a comedic character, so he didn't really show off his comedic skills. But there are moments in it which are...
I would have got
Cook.
Gene Hackman again, because that would have made all the continuity. If you can't get Christopher Reeve, get Gene Hackman in.
Maybe they tried.
Maybe. There's nowhere anywhere that says anything about that, though. There's always Peter Cook.
So anyway, Supergirl was made. Oh, the Phantom Zone scared me to death when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was made, and here's a little bit of trivia for you, Greg.
Oh, yeah.
The guy in Supergirl, I forget the character's name, who fell in love with Supergirl instead of the witch.
I know what you're going to say. Go on.
He played Ellis in Die Hard.
Yeah.
You know, the guy who gets shot because he tries to give them John McClane.
Yeah.
He was Ellis. Didn't know that until recently.
I didn't know that at all. I thought he was going to say something else.
All right, what do you think I was going to say?
Honestly, I don't know.
All right. Anyway, so now we are at the point where...
It flopped.
It flopped, yeah, and they didn't know what to do with the franchise at all. So along come Canon Movies, Gollum and Globus, who at the time...
We don't like talking about them very much, do we?
I love Canon Movies, Greg, but they get a bad rap. They made things like the Death Wish films, they made... what else did they make? Masters of the Universe. All of those kind of films that we love. They made a lot of Chuck Norris films, Missing in Action and all that kind of stuff. They snapped up the rights to Superman when the Superman franchise was at a low ebb and nobody wanted to touch it anymore.
Well, the Sorkins snapped the hands off, didn't they?
Yeah, because they didn't think they were going to make any more money from the Superman franchise.
And by this point as well, Christopher Reeve had said he's never coming back as Superman. That's him done.
So... Canon managed to get the rights to Superman 4. Had it been made by another studio, who knows what would have happened. But they announced a big budget for the film, all of that, and then the job was to get Christopher Reeve to be in a new Superman film, wasn't it? And how did they persuade him, Greg?
Cash and the lure of another film that he can write himself. He's always wanted it. Apparently, he always had a script that he wanted to get out there, and this was a perfect opportunity for him to do it. So that was one thing. Obviously, the money, and the third thing was he had a big say in this film. He was co-writer of it, I think. He came up with the idea, the concept of it. The
whole idea of saving the planet and getting rid of nuclear weapons and all that was a Christopher Reeve idea.
And he phoned up the original Superman 1, I think it was the director or the writer, and said about his idea. And the original guy said, I wouldn't go down that route if I were you, because that's becoming reality.
Yeah.
Superman isn't a reality film. And Christopher Reeve clearly said, nope.
No, he had a message that he wanted to get out there and he was going to use the film to do that. He's obviously clearly against nuclear armament.
Yeah, but you can see why he said I wouldn't do it, because that's becoming political then.
Yeah.
Whereas Superman is just about fighting off, the baddies and all that, whereas this is a real life situation at the time.
Yeah, so he came up with the concept, all of that, and he managed to talk Gene Hackman into being into the film. Am I correct?
Yeah, Gene said he wouldn't have done it if it wasn't for Christopher Reeve.
And
all the others obviously come back, wouldn't they? That's a big payday, isn't it?
Kidder,
Jimmy.
Mark McClure.
Mark McClure.
I'm Mark McClure. You may know me from such films.
Yeah, know me.
Exactly.
I'm just going to drink this tea here.
Is there a gin, Nick?
I've gone with Jack Daniels today.
All right. So now we're at the point where Superman 4 is getting made. Christopher Reeve is on board. The script has been developed by him and the script writers. Gene Hackman's going to be in it. Margot Kidder's back. All the cast are back. Then they come up with this idea for an anti-superhero called Nuclear Man.
Nuclear Man.
So Christopher Reeve, Superman, was going to rid the world of nuclear weapons, and as a byproduct of doing that, it created Nuclear Man. Or Gene Hackman's character, Lex Luthor, managed to get some kind of DNA or something onto one of the rockets that Christopher Reeve threw into the sun.
It was a hair follicle.
That's correct, yeah, because they used... That's another thing that annoyed me. Didn't they use hair, like bolt clippers, to cut through Superman's hair, even though it was supposed to be impenetrable?
A what, sorry?
Uncuttable.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, very much so. It's quite funny, that whole section, if you've never seen that bit of the film, because it is so cheaply made. It's clearly just a bit of wire that they've cut, and then as they cut it, all the set falls apart, really.
Yeah.
You need to pause it and see, but the whole set, the glass... If this makes no sense, just watch this bit I'm on about where they cut Superman's hair, and all the props they use just collapse, and instead of redoing it, they just go, we'll use that.
That'll do.
That'll do.
So they introduced Nuclear Man, who was originally going to be played by Clive Mantle from Casualty.
Now, if you don't know who this guy is, just have a look, because he's not really the superhero type looking guy, is he?
No, and there is some footage around.
Yeah, it's on the DVD now.
Clive Mantle as Nuclear Man, and it's ridiculous, isn't it?
It's pathetic.
And yes, the clips aren't quite finished. There's no post-production on them or anything, but if you watch them, they just look horrendous. So look out for those on the extras. But
basically, what it is it's gone wrong, hasn't it? The first experiment of making Nuclear Man to obviously defeat the mighty Superman it just went wrong, and this guy turned out to be a bit of an idiot, wasn't he?
Mark Pillow as Nuclear Man. Incidentally, on Wikipedia, when you look things up, if it's got the name of the cast, you can click on that person and it'll show you the rest of their films and things about them. You can't click on his name. But I believe he does do a few, or has done a few conventions and things.
About this?
I think so. I'd have to check that, but I'm
pretty interesting to see what he thought about it. I've never seen him do an interview about it. I would imagine he's a little bit embarrassed. Do you think he got paid for it?
Well, yeah. Well, you wouldn't do it for nothing, would you? You would have had to at least get the union rate at the time.
It was such a bad part. I mean, if you've never seen it, please, just try and find it. You imagine this in the cinema, you'd have been wondering, what on earth is going on here? This is a Superman film. You imagine 10 years previous, you'd gone to watch Superman 1, and now you're watching this.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So it had a budget of £17 million.
Which is horrendous.
Which quickly disappeared on getting the cast back, I think. Gene Hackman wouldn't have been cheap, I wouldn't have thought.
At that point, I don't think Christopher Reeve would have been cheap either.
No. So a lot of that money would have been swallowed up by that, not
Swollen.
swollen.
Gets bigger money. Dip in water.
So the film's set to be shot in the UK, where lots of big Hollywood films were shot at the time because we had the best facilities and there's some tax cuts, and a lot of films are still filmed here because we are very accommodating to big productions.
But again, it shouldn't have been done.
However, they ran out of money for sound stages. They couldn't build the big sets that they wanted to build of Metropolis, so they decided they were going to scout a location in the UK that they could turn into Metropolis.
Planet.
And where did they decide upon, Greg?
It was just a business place in Milton Keynes, wasn't it?
Milton Keynes. Of all the places in all the world.
Yeah, I mean, you have to understand this. We're in England doing this. So for us to see... I mean, I've been recently to where the Superman 1 Daily Planet was filmed. So to see that, it's incredible. The big building, the New York, the skyscrapers, everything. And then they thought they'd get away with the New York Daily Planet being in Milton Keynes for Superman 4.
And do you know how they did that?
With pigeons.
And fire hydrants. And a yellow taxi.
That's it. Oh, and a Daily Planet green board sign they built and put it on a...
That building is now Argos.
Are you kidding me?
I'm pretty sure that place is now Argos, where the Daily Planet was.
Well, if you do watch our Tea and Toast YouTube channel, we are considering doing some sort of...
filming location trip.
I know people have done it before, but as really big fans of this, I think it'd be good for us to go there and just see it. Now, I've been to the Superman 1, I know you haven't, but...
All right.
Sorry about that. Recently, with all my real friends. To go and see that would be, I think, something... I do think we'd get there, though, and go, oh,
yeah.
Is that it?
Because I believe it's Milton Keynes bus station that's doubled for the United Nations building.
Of course. Yeah. Well, you would, wouldn't you? Do they not think, though, doing that, that would be it? Surely they must think, well, this isn't going to work, is it? We're in Milton Keynes. No offence, Milton Keynes people.
Milton Keynes people.
I'm sure it's a lovely area, but it's not quite Metropolis, is it?
Do you think there are any Star Wars people that live with Milton Keynes? Then there'd be Star Wars people in Milton Keynes people.
You mean the Trekkies?
Yes, Greg. So, yeah, it had a budget of 17 million and eventually only made 15.6 million at the box office.
See, I think that's just people going there in hope, isn't it? Remember, the trailers would have been pretty good for that. You didn't know the ins and outs then, did you? You didn't have the internet like we do now.
I think
you just saw Superman 4.
And I think the trailers were probably all of the best bits of the film for Superman 4.
Oh, they used London Underground as well, didn't they?
Did they?
Oh, yeah. Poor. And you know, I mean, well, I know we'll get into this a bit more later on, I suppose, but it was just... Even Superman 3, the flying scenes they nailed, didn't they? Yeah. Whereas Superman 4, they reused the same ones over again, and you can see the lines around him where the green screen was behind. You can see the buckles on his belts where he's flying. I mean, these are just some of the things that just are so bad with this film, but the reason we're doing this is because we both love it.
Yeah, and I think there are lots of people like us who love the film, but not because it's a great film, because of the nostalgia that's attached to it.
Go into the video shop.
Yeah.
Honestly, hand on heart, this was the one I always picked up as a kid.
Yeah.
And mainly because what we've always spoke about, the artwork on the front.
Yeah, because that's what sold films to us in those days. You might have seen a trailer on TV or an advert in a magazine, but we didn't have the internet to go and look at a review or, see any clips of the film. We just went on that artwork on the front of the box and the little bit of blurb on the back.
The what?
The little couple of paragraphs that explain the film on the back of the...
Description.
Yeah, that's it.
Just use simple words, Jason.
Simple words for simple...
These
times.
are not simple people listening to this.
No, it's not about you.
Oh, right. Do you know, I read his book.
Whose?
Christopher Reeves.
Right.
And I was searching desperately to try and find out what he really thought of Superman 4, and he really doesn't speak about it a lot. But if you go on YouTube, you see all his interviews about obviously plugging the film before it came out, and he's really pushing how great it is. But then in his book, there's something like one line of it, and he just says, the less said about this film, the better.
Really?
He hated it. I mean, he talks about the build-up and how much he was let down about it, but the actual film itself, he just says, the less said.
Yeah, and if you do see some interviews with him online, he talks about the reasons why he did it was because he was promised the other film and that he wanted to get his message out there through the film. But then if you see an interview with Margot Kidder, they say, why do you think Chris Reeve came back? And she just goes, money.
She doesn't care, does she?
No.
Straight out with it. Well, that's why she did it.
Well, absolutely. And I wouldn't have thought that she was getting that many offers around the time either.
Well, talk about typecast.
Yeah, she's Lois Lane, isn't she? That's the thing.
The only one that wasn't typecast is Gene Hackman.
And that's testament to him as an actor, isn't it? Because he managed to break free of that Lex Luthor and do other films that were just as brilliant. But we talk about the budget running out. One thing that always gets me about this film, and it's very hard to get past, is the titles.
Oh dear. I mean, let's say one thing before we carry on. The saving grace about this film was the soundtrack.
Yeah, because they stuck with the John Williams.
Yeah, but the guy who did it, Alexander Courage, I think his name was. He was spectacular. What he put together with what he got given was brilliant. Because he did change a lot of it. There was lots of new sound in there, lots of new. You know, we were so familiar with the first one and first, second, and third one. The fourth one, he did do, like, for instance, the bad guy had a new section of music. There was little clips of good music for Superman, if you know what I mean. Like his little bit. It was just a different way of doing it, and I think he did a really good part. I bought the CD at the time. It's brilliant.
Well, it's just great music. It still gives me chills. The hairs on my arms go up when I hear the original Superman fanfare.
It's hot in here, isn't it?
Yeah. So, the titles were supposed to be the iconic Superman 3D titles that were so ahead of their time when it first came out, and they just told you that this film was going to be amazing. You already started to believe things could fly when they were flying through the air. They attempted it on Superman 4, clearly didn't have the budget to finish those titles off.
You wouldn't think just doing that would be expensive, though, would you?
I know, but at the time, you know, it wasn't as easy as clicking a few buttons on a computer, I guess. There's a lot of... Not saying that special effects guys don't do a lot of hard work these days, but it's obviously much easier now with the technology that we have.
Especially on all the trackers. They do a lot of special effects, don't they?
Yes, Greg. So the titles, for me, were the first part of the disappointment of that film. I remember as a kid putting it on, being really excited to see it. And it would have been a Saturday afternoon. I would have got it from the video shop because I didn't get to go to the cinema that much. And we would have drawn the curtains to try and make it feel like a cinema, and we'd have put the video in the VHS and we'd have pressed play. Of course, we'd have watched the trailers first.
Rewind it.
Yeah, rewind it, because some selfish person hadn't rewound it from the time I brought it back.
Makes me sick. But don't you remember the first bit, though? That I remember instantly watching this bit. The very, very first bit with the Warner Brothers logo coming on. And it was a new section that they'd done for this. Just a new couple of notes. Da, 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 da,
Yeah.
Just with one instrument.
But then it went into the titles.
And then it went diddle 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 da 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 da, and it was horrendous.
Yeah.
Even the S. Do you remember the S?
Yeah.
It was just red.
But we got past the titles, and I don't remember thinking that this was a bad film when I was a kid. I mean, it's easy to look at things through rose-coloured glasses now, isn't it?
And the funny thing, you know, I said earlier about him flying. And it's going to sound so stupid, but this is what you think as a kid, isn't it? Him flying differently to how he flew in the first three, head on, made me quite excited. Because it was different. It was a different... Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
It was different. It wasn't like the standard him flying sideways. It was front on, and I remember thinking as a kid, oh my God, this is a brand new Superman, but it's Christopher Reeve. It's brilliant. This is going to be brilliant. And it really, well, it wasn't.
But it's not the terrible film that it's made out to be for me. And I don't know if people listening would agree. But if you go on Rotten Tomatoes, it's got like an 11% freshness score and a 16% audience score, which is, you know, they rank among the lowest scores on there. And I don't think that's deserved.
Can you do your top four in order?
What, Superman?
Yeah.
Well, 1.
Yeah.
2.
Yeah.
4.
Yeah.
3.
Yeah.
And 3 only goes bottom because of that ridiculous scene where they make her look like a robot that scared me to death when I was a kid.
I think the whole film wasn't great, though. I mean, there was no opening.
No.
There was no opening.
Which is the one that opened in the streets
That's
of
it,
New
3.
York where the penguin sets on fire. Yeah,
That's 3.
yeah.
Horrendous.
And it was just campy from then on, wasn't it?
The only thing they got right in that, they did do the titles similar, but all that was happening.
Yeah.
With people falling in the streets and cement being thrown in the face, and it's just stupid.
Yeah. So Superman 4 was made. It had a cinema release. It was released on July 24th in 1987 in the United States and Canada. And it grossed just 5.6 million during its opening weekend. Played in 1,500 theatres and was ranked number 4 at the box office.
Well, what was that at the time then? That'd be interesting, wouldn't
Well,
it?
like you said, I think the initial reaction was this is a Superman film. Got a huge fan base that's going to go and watch it. But then they went to watch it and word got out that it was terrible. So the sales just dived off a cliff. The Quest for Peace is the one that did worst at the box office out of all of the films. That's Superman 4. In case you didn't know, that's the subtitle, The Quest for Peace.
I found, sorry, while you was talking then, I found a section that he says from his book, Christopher Reeve. Do you want me to read it to you, Jason?
Yeah.
It says, this is the only bit he talks about, so it was only like a paragraph, didn't I? We were hampered by budget constraints and cutbacks in all departments. Canon Films had nearly 30 projects at the time. 30 projects they were doing then? Are you yawning, Jason?
A little bit, yeah.
Am I boring you?
No.
Okay.
Just late night.
Superman 4 received no... It's late night? Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
It's...
No, I had a late night.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, 9:30.
It says here, Superman 4 received no special consideration. For example, Connor and Rosenthal wrote a scene in which Superman lands on 42nd Street and walks down the double yellow lines to the United Nations, where he gives a speech. If that had been the scene in Superman 1, we would have actually done it on 42nd Street. Richard Donner would have choreographed hundreds of pedestrians and vehicles and blah, 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 blah. Where instead, we shot an industrial park in England in the rain with about 100 extras, not a car in sight, and a dozen pigeons thrown in for atmosphere. Even if the story had been brilliant, I don't think we could ever have lived up to the audience expectation with this approach. Bang on.
Yeah.
And then later on he says, the less said about this film, the better.
And there's some other quotes here from Christopher Reeve where he says Superman 4 was a catastrophe from start to finish. That failure was a huge blow to my career.
I mean, he was... Thing is, he made a lot of money from it, didn't he? And I don't think that did ruin his career because, I hate to say this, he was typecast. He couldn't do anything else, I'm afraid.
No, yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. That isn't a bad thing at all because, let's be honest, and I'm going to say this right now, there only ever has been and only ever will be one Superman.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
That's
Christopher
right.
Reeve.
You know, there were plans for a Superman 5 apparently, even after the disaster of Superman 4.
With him.
Yes, but it never happened. It never got off the ground. He probably refused to.
Well, we all know about the Nicolas Cage one, don't we?
Yeah, the death of Superman, was it?
That would have. I mean, I'm not. I mean, again, I don't. There might be some real heavy comic book people listening to this. I don't think anyone's listening to this, but if they are, great. And they might like the new Supermans that they did with Batman and Henry Cavill. I think they are
dark.
I think they're such a knock on what he did, Christopher Reeve.
Yeah.
That I don't think I should. I mean, I won't watch them again. That's me done with them. So I think, I think it's a shame, and I think that particular film idea with Nicolas Cage would have been even worse than what they've done with Superman now.
If you don't know what we're talking about, just Google Nicolas Cage Superman. They got quite far down the line. It's Tim Burton, wasn't it?
Got the
It was gonna be a
costumes
Tim
made and
Burton film.
everything.
Yeah, there's footage of him trying on costumes.
Terrible.
And if you read some things about the ideas for the plot, it just sounds
Big spiders.
Yeah, horrendous.
Well, that's the thing, you see. I mean, honestly, if I was a child now and I was watching the Superman movies now, would I have been into it as much? Maybe, I don't know. But the one thing with Superman, Christopher Reeve's films, they were believable.
Yeah, we believed
They were
a man
genuinely
could fly.
believable. There was no monsters coming out. All right, there was Nuclear Man and things like that, but they were believable. There was no big spiders, no big... I mean, has there been a dinosaur? I don't know. I don't know. Big monsters, should we say, coming out. These were believable movies because they didn't go too far, whereas now they've ruined it. All these...
Just been unsuccessful. And, you know, you've got to give credit to Superman Returns as a fan.
We need to do a podcast on that, I think.
Yeah.
Because I've I haven't got that many horrendous things to say about it, because I think whatever film came out of Superman after he died would have been the same reaction.
Brandon Routh was a great Superman in the Christopher Reeve style. I think he very much obviously based his performance on Christopher Reeve style, and the film was written for the fans, which was probably the mistake that was made, because there wasn't enough action in it for an audience, but there were lots of nods to the original Superman, which for me was...
Well, I mean, it came out in, 2006, so I was 26 then, and you were, 40? So to go to the cinema, for me, to watch that with the actual titles, with the music, which is what he wanted, didn't he, the director?
Yeah.
He said, I'm not doing it unless I can use the music. Well, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. Whereas the new ones, again, no nod, no music, no nothing.
Yeah, it's gone down a road that as a Superman fan, I find it hard to watch those films. Henry, what's his surname? Cavill is not a disaster as Superman for me, but it's just the whole storyline.
Let's just go back to Jason, when Clark Kent, Christopher Reeve, was chatting to Lois Lane, and then he wanted to tell her that he's going to be he's Superman. And what did he do? He took his glasses off while she was in the bathroom, and he was about to tell her, and his whole shoulders went back, up in the air, and he looked like Superman. Yeah. And then he bottled it.
Put his glasses on, he was immediately Clark Kent again.
Just a pair of glasses?
Yeah.
That's it. Now, who's done that since?
No, you're right. And the whole sort of concept of Man of Steel, for me, as a kid, I've said it, you'll believe a man can fly. I never once believed that Superman could kill anyone, even his mortal enemy.
That was horrible, that bit, that film.
Yeah. I always believed that Superman would get the better of any villain and they would be taken off to jail and all that kind of stuff. You never thought he would kill anyone.
Too far.
Yeah.
And it gets me, because it is a bit... You can't say that's a U or a PG, can you?
No.
You can't. I mean, it may very well be, but if it is, I don't...
And I have to admit, I'm going to admit it now, that I haven't watched the whole of Superman versus Batman. I can't get through it.
I did.
And?
Painful.
Right. I think I've watched the first 20 minutes of it and it's just too dark for me.
That's enough, and it's too long.
And a ridiculous concept.
Yeah. The whole thing is. But I think we've lost the Batman as well that we had. I mean, that's another topic altogether, isn't it?
Yeah. So what's the future of the Superman franchise? I don't know if there are any other films slated. I just think they're finding it really hard.
Well, he's quit. He's not doing it anymore, is he?
Isn't he?
Cavill. He said he's moving on. I think they need to go back to the start again. I do. I know they've... Clearly, it's been a success, hasn't it? Because they've done 3 now, so he's been involved in 3 of them. So it's obviously worked. But if you want Superman to catch what we used to have, they've got to go back to like the original. They've got to make it believable.
They've got to somehow capture the magic, find the right actor and actresses to do all of the roles, and get it right like they did originally. It's got, for me, from Superman 1, alright, there's the anomaly with 3, but it has, if you look at it along the timeline, just got gradually worse and worse and worse, hasn't it? Up to today, this point where they can't make a decent Superman film for some reason. With all the technology that we've got today, you would think it would be easier to make it now than it was in 1978.
I don't know why they insist on making it so dark.
No.
It's so dark. I don't understand
I mean, it's DC are trying to catch up with Marvel, aren't they, in terms of the films that they make, and I think they're just going down the wrong path with them.
I do.
It's a completely different property to Marvel, and if they just went back and watched the original Superman films a few times, then they might realise that they need to recapture some of that.
Jason, I very much agree.
Thanks very much, Greg, and I think that is a great point for us to end this first TnT Nostalgia podcast.
We went straight in, didn't we?
Yeah, we didn't mess about. 2 feet, Superman 4.
2 feet?
We jumped in with both feet.
He flies though?
We jumped in.
Well, I mean, in Superman 4, he got his buckle around his waist, which you can blatantly see. And you can see all the wires and everything. I mean, if you've never... Again, before we go, if you've never seen Superman 4, you've been listening to us bore you for the last half hour, please put it on. It's worth it. They don't wipe out the wires. You can see them all the way through it. You can see them on the green screen. They're supposed to be in space. They're standing up.
Have you finished?
Yeah.
That's it for the TNT Nostalgia Podcast episode about Superman 4. If you would like to let us know what you want us to talk about in these podcasts, you can head over to our Twitter, which is Too Old to Grow Up. You didn't even know we had that, did you, Greg?
What's Twitter?
Never mind. We're on Instagram, Too Old to Grow Up.
Who?
We're also on Facebook, Too Old to Grow Up. And you could send us an email to tnt@totgu.com. That's tnt@totgu.com.
Doesn't have to be in capital.
tnt@totgu.com.
Don't forget our YouTube channel as well. Go and watch that.
Go and watch us on the YouTube channel, which is also Too Old to Grow Up, and we'll be back with more of these podcasts pretty soon. But please, in the meantime, head on to any of our social media or email and let us know what you think that we should talk about on the podcast, and we'll do our best to accommodate.
We will.
In the meantime, goodbye.
Take care.
Streaming around the world. From the United Kingdom. You're listening to the TNT Nostalgia Podcast.
Wait a minute, Doc. Are you telling me you built a time machine out of a DeLorean?
With Jason and Greg taking you back, one memory at a time.